In my opinion, the worst cue for better posture is unfortunately the most common one, which is to stand up straight and pull your shoulders back. Yes, I know this is very counterintuitive to what our moms told us growing up, but I want to explain why this is the case and what we can do instead for better posture. What this stand up straight and pull your shoulders back cue does, whether you're sitting or standing, is it actually just pushes your pelvis forward into a lot of extension and it flares the low ribs up. So initially you may feel taller because you're trying to extend your spine and straighten up, but are you actually able to hold this for your entire standing or sitting day? Definitely not. We're going to forget, or we're going to feel very stiff in that position, because what we're doing is we're flattening out our upper back and extending our low back, which is making us seem like we're taller temporarily. But what that's actually doing is just driving our pelvis consciously forward and forward and forward. If you stand up and try to stand tall and pull your shoulders back, that is going to push your weight more so onto your forefoot, which over time is training us to not stay back on our heels. If you try walking around like this, you're not going to be able to heel strike very efficiently, and that can have its whole own host of problems. But what I'm trying to say here is that this is not something that's conducive to the normal human spine curve. The normal human spine curve has a healthy degree of lumbar lordosis, thoracic kyphosis or rounding, and then lordosis of the neck. But if we are up here squeezing our shoulders back, this is problematic because we're flattening this part out. The shoulder blade is a concave structure like this, which should sit on a concave pushing out rib cage. Our upper rib cage, right here in the thoracic spine in particular, this allows for the nice gliding motion like this. But if we're up here and compressing it, then we're basically taking this rounded shoulder blade and pushing it up against a flat thoracic spine, and it's not going to be able to move very well. So it's going to be stuck. And not only that, we're teaching our center of mass to be pushed forward and forward and forward, which over time can lead to a position where we're kind of stuck in this forward anterior pelvic tilt. Now, if I've trained my pelvis to stay in this forward position, then I'm probably going to seek a strategy to come back somehow. And that's going to be by orienting my rib cage down and pushing my head forward. And this is where a lot of people can end up and actually be feeding their kyphotic posture by trying to fight it. In my opinion, posture should be something that we self-organize into. It should be something that the body naturally feels comfortable being in. If we're shoving ourselves into a posture that doesn't feel natural, then why would our body have a reason to stay there? Why would it want to stay there? It's in the posture that it's in for a reason. A lot of the exercises I give people are trying to get them into a stacked position where they have their ribs over their pelvis, which allows them to have a healthy degree of rounding of the upper back, but not too much, and also lordosis or extension of these two areas, but not too much. If my pelvis is very forward and I have a very slouched posture here because I'm trying to even out my spine, then I'm going to be shorter. But if I can actually get this back into a normal position, then that allows me to actually regain height and feel taller. So a lot of the exercises I'm trying to get people to do is get people to stack their ribs over their pelvis more efficiently. But many people have pushed themselves into a position of anterior pelvic tilt, or they have lifestyle sitting demands, they have training demands, genetics could be playing into it, and they're in a position most commonly of extension. That's why so many people have rib flare. So what I want to do is I want to restore this curve into a more neutral position where we can inhale, and when we inhale, that's going to allow us to be a little taller because the rib cage should expand in all directions. If we give the body the ability to inhale, which should allow us to become taller without overly extending, then it won't have as much of a reason to stay in one of these slouched or overly extended or combination of both postures. In fact, when I give people exercises like what I'm about to show you and exercises in my beginner body restoration program, they feel taller without having to try to force themselves to be.
Because I feel like I'm walking just more upright, straighter. Like, it's certainly no placebo. When I'm walking around, I just feel I'm in a better hip position without a doubt. That's, I'm walking away after doing the exercise feeling taller.
Here are two exercises that I like for training a stack of the rib cage over the pelvis. The first one is a good starting position. The second one would be a nice upright position that you can train. So to set up for this, we need a step. You can use a couple of books. You can use an actual step like we have, but you don't generally want more than about 3 to 4 inches of elevation. 2 would be fine. And then we have a ball in between Trevor's knees here, which allows him to keep his knees in line with his toes and also his knees in line with his hips. It should not be bigger or smaller than that. And now all we're going to do to start is place his hands on his lowest ribs there and just perform a nice soft exhale, which is going to coincide with him while he keeps his whole foot flat here, dragging back on those steps, which is going to recruit his hamstrings and slightly lift his tailbone off of the ground. So now he should feel some hamstrings back of the thighs, keeping his whole foot flat, especially right here, that big toe area and the heel. And now what he's going to do, maintaining all of this, is reach above his head with his palms facing each other at about 100 to 120 degrees. And now it's going to be hard for him to maintain this position. He's going to want his ribs to flare, but we got to make sure that they don't do that. And you can manage that if you feel those foot pressures and also a little bit of the hamstrings recruited right here. So now what we're going to do is just exhale again, getting all that air out, really soft, long exhales until he feels his side abs engaged. Not his six pack, but his side abs. And then pause, close the mouth, inhale through the nose, nice and soft. And then exhale again. It should be about 5 to 10 seconds, soft exhales, big open mouth. And then about 5-second inhales through the nose, nice and soft. Making sure he's holding on to a little bit of those side abs as he inhales, because the exhale set those side abs and pulled the ribs very slightly down. The two most common mistakes in this activity would be reaching too far overhead. So what's going to end up happening is they're too far and then these ribs are going to flare and it's going to be impossible for them to fully exhale and get these ribs to come down. So we're looking for about 100 to 120 degree reach overhead relative to the floor and or that trunk position. The other thing is that people will lose their toe contact and the ball to foot contact. Those toes peel up, and now we're not going to be capturing the foot position we want that is going to match up with the pelvic position that we want. So we got to make sure that the ball of the big toe, the heel, and that outside lateral toe where the ball of the foot is in contact with the step or the books at all times. This is the standing serratus squat from Posture Restoration Institute. To set up for this, we're going to be about a foot-ish length away from the wall, but it's going to depending on the individual and how big their feet are and where they're comfortable. And we want to have a feet hip width apart, toes straight ahead stance. So we're going to have a pretty narrow stance here. So we're going to start by placing our forearms on that wall in sort of this neutral palm position. And depending on you, we may cue you to have a parallel humeral angle with the floor or a little bit lower than that. It'll depend on where you're comfortable. And what we're going to do to start is just apply a little bit of pressure into that wall as we push our ribs back, not losing any height in our skeleton. So we don't want to slouch, but we want to get our ribs being pushed back via the protraction of the elbows and the shoulders right here. And then we're going to make sure our hips are slightly tucked, but they're not dumping underneath us like that. They're staying perfectly stacked underneath our rib cage right here. So we should have a little bit of flexion right here. And the most important part is because of that, we're trying to get our center mass back onto our heels. So we should keep most of our weight into our heels, about 2/3 of our weight. Now, what we're going to do is slide our knees forward, maintaining that position. But once we feel like we lose more than 2/3 of our weight on our heels, we've gone too far. So make sure that most of your weight stays back there. And then all you're going to do is keep your eyes up and exhale through your mouth, nice and long until you feel a little bit of side abs engaged. And then you're going to hold that and then inhale and really keep protracting, and you're going to fill your back up with air because you're holding onto those side abs. Exhale through your mouth just like that. All the while, to recap, make sure that you're staying tall, ribs back, weights in the heels, and you're breathing. The most common mistake on this is people are gonna shrug their shoulders. So make sure you don't do that. We gotta make sure that they're relaxed because that's gonna prevent us from using our neck. If we do shrug, we're much more likely to kick on our neck. So make sure that's relaxed. The other thing, again, as I mentioned earlier, pelvis should not be sliding forward or backwards. It needs to be stacked directly underneath the hips. I would recommend doing these exercises anywhere between 2 to 4 sets of about 5 to 8 slow breath cycles. That would mean 1 to 2 sets in the morning, 1 to 2 sets at night. And not only should that help you with your posture over time, it should also help you be able to just feel more loose and feel like you can rotate and move better. Because if you're extended like this, try to rotate. Try to see how your spine feels when you move from side to side. And then shake it out a little bit, stay tall, push your ribs back a little bit, but don't lose any height in your skeleton, and then try to rotate and see how much more loose you feel. If you do want to work on your posture consciously throughout the day, that's cool. Just don't make it your primary means of trying to improve your posture. Remember, we want unconscious competency. So if you are going to sit, what I would recommend is feel your sit bones, your ischial tuberosities right here, evenly on your chair, and keep your heels flat. That's going to put your pelvis in a nice neutral position. If you're going to stand, stand with your feet hip width-ish apart, toes straight ahead, and be tall, but don't overdo it to the point where your ribs flare. And then just put your hands on your low ribs, get a nice, long, soft exhale like I coach in the exercises. And you're gonna feel your rib cage come down, but you're not gonna really lose height in your skeleton. That's a good position. So it looks like this. Tall here. At the end of that 5 to 10 second exhale, I have my ribs down, my pelvis will come underneath me a little bit more, but I didn't slouch.